Welcome everyone. My name is Verena and I'm part of the Solid Earth team. So continuing on with the series of live streams this month, and today I wanted to really dive into a little bit of a difficult topic. And I was already, when I put up the note about doing this live stream, I already mentioned that I might have been a little bit ambitious, thinking that I could dive into this on a live stream. But here I am showing up for it because I actually feel really passionate about this, and it is a difficult topic. So we're going to just explore a few ideas for affordable or more affordable building in a time of resource scarcity. And really having to show up here and say, I think I do have experience and something to contribute. And I also know it is a really complicated topic, and there's many ways to look at this and to analyze it. And by no means am I claiming that I have done analysis of this and that I have all the answers. So just showing up humbly and wanting to contribute and maybe inspire and give hope, because in my professional practice as an earth builder, having Solid Earth as a building company, but also running the Earthbuilding Academy, which is very much geared towards online teaching and empowering people to build their own things. I'm coming across this real worry about not being able to afford housing or ever be able to build a home for oneself or the family, and younger people really worrying that they will not have access to their own place and that they will be renting forever. And it is a big issue. And overlaying all this is what is going on at the moment is that everything is getting more expensive. So yeah, I'm feeling there's a little bit of a crunch coming, and I'm sure I'm not alone with that. I'm sure that's why you're watching. And I don't have the answers, but I can look back on some of the history. We have been in these crunch times before, and also I have been involved with owner builders and people needing to reduce building costs for a couple of decades now. And I have personal experience of building our own home. So I can compare many things and maybe contribute some ideas. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment. The way I see it happen is I've put a lot of photos in to show you projects, and the projects will allow us to just dive into like some of the details and some of the solutions that people have found. So again, it's not a lecture, like a theoretical lecture analysis of costs. I'm not able to give you a cost for a building, but I can show details which made a difference. So just give me a second while I screen share. And just wanting to start with this. So it's just a couple of statistics that I've pulled off the net because I have been avoiding it, but I actually wanted to just have a couple of figures here. So these are timber framed construction costs. We will mainly be talking about earth building in this live stream actually, but I wanted to just look at, like really mainstream construction, what is going on and what are we up against here. So in timber frame construction, again, like labor is actually only a small part of the cost, and the really big lion's share of costs is in the materials and consenting and so forth. In 2006, and the reason I pulled this number out is because that's when we built our building, the average cost per square meter was $1,250. Last year, it was double that. And in the last quarter alone, building materials have gone up by 16%, which is massive. And that is due to supply problems because of pandemic and so forth. We are encountering the situation where buildings are getting bigger and bigger, and there's a lot of resource use going on. But definitely, like across the board, from timber through to fixings, electricals, and so forth, everything has gone up heaps. And that 16% is an average price increase. When we're looking at, resource considerations, in this live stream, I wanted to focus on two things. I touched on resource considerations in my last live stream, where I was talking about options, different building options when you're looking at natural materials. So maybe you want to also check that out. That was last week. But these two resource considerations, the cost, the actual building cost, and then the environmental footprint of the building, I think should be looked at hand in hand, because at least the way I see it and feel it is that we are not really separate from the environment. So cutting building costs, like from a wallet perspective, is important. But if it comes to an environmental cost, or if it then brings up your costs of the building while you're using the building, you need to look at the whole picture, in my opinion. And sometimes the initial costs will be a little bit higher, but you will actually be then saving costs during the lifetime of the building. So really encouraging you to do a wholesome analysis when you're looking at cost, and at the same time really acknowledging that initial cost, mortgage, and so forth is a really important thing, and it is important not to overextend and to be realistic about that. So in our experience, and from what we've heard clients and designers say, is that the cost of your wall system is not actually the lion's share of the building cost. There's much more going on than, like the materials you choose for your wall system. And what we have really seen is that owner builder or self-builder effort can reduce the cost of the building considerably. But again, it has to be weighed up against other factors. So if you, for example, have to take time off work and you don't have an income while you're building, that sort of weighs up against the costs you're saving by doing owner builder input. So we have really tried to, when people come to us and talk about self-building, to really advise them to look at this in a holistic way and really make smart decisions around that. It is useful to have some input, because some of the jobs on site, like little repetitive jobs, it all adds up. So you definitely, like, having some input will be good for the wallet. But the other thing that we found really makes it a difference is if you're able to use secondhand materials. In some instances, you're not even allowed to use secondhand materials. So being able to check that and having time to gather those secondhand materials, if you're allowed to use them, will really make a difference. And the other aspect of that is milling and drying timber. So sometimes there's local sources that are more cost effective, and really having time to organize that and to look into that is useful. And then the biggest one of them all is to keep your design simple and modest. So this is such an important thing. And it's not just because of the price tag of the building, it is also because of that environmental footprint. So I'm really hoping that if you're interested in affordable homes in affordable building, that you get this, that you understand that it is a time in history that we have to become more modest. And you can live a really beautiful and happy life in a smaller building. It is still valuable. It has still resale value. And the way things are going, I think it will just be corrected down again, because buildings are getting really, really big, and that's just not sustainable. So I know it is opinionated, and I have received slack for that, but this is just my bottom line when we talk about resource considerations and saving resources. In saying that, I am not just standing for small buildings, unconsented buildings, just small relocatable buildings. Like in my professional experience, I have supported people with a whole range of different types of buildings. And personally, I like good quality. I like safe buildings. It is really important to me that buildings are built to standards. I feel that the building standards and regulations are there for a reason, and they're mainly there to keep people safe. That the structure is safe, that there's enough insulation, that there's enough weather protection. So that is my, the professional baseline for that is I do like good quality buildings, and that sometimes brings the price up a little bit. On the other hand, I have been involved with many different types of buildings, very experimental, non-consented buildings, to very expensive builds for clients, and the whole range in between. And as such, I can compare the things a little bit, and I am not saying that unconsented buildings are bad quality at all. In actual fact, I have, if I can generalize one thing, is that all the projects that were done by owner builders were extremely high quality, especially if they were consented, because owner builders take pride in building and they have achieved amazing things. And I am so humbled and honored to have been part of the journey of some of them. And then I also see, some of the smaller unconsented things are just less durable. They're not built to last 50 years the way they should if they were consented. And sometimes that's a shame, a little bit of a waste of energy and resources. And sometimes it doesn't matter, because building shelter can be an interim thing, So there's this weighing up of what do you want to achieve with a building? What type of building are you looking at? And those decisions will affect how much a building will cost. So here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have different options. There is a whole range of different things happening. And I've just scanned through some of the newspaper articles. I will be linking some of them below, because it's interesting to read up what people get up to. But you can have your consented building, you can have exempt building work that is still legal, but it has to be in certain parameters. There's definitely unconsented stuff going on. Sometimes people relocate buildings and do them up, which is a very resource efficient thing to do. And of course, there's the rising tiny home movement, which is interesting in and of itself. It really touches something in me that the thing about the small size is very cool. But like in the tiny home movement, there's everything from quite affordable tiny homes to extremely expensive tiny homes. So just because a home is tiny doesn't mean it's cheap. And because here we're coming at it from the viewpoint through the lens of natural building materials, I'm mainly talking about earth building, and just wanting to show you like some options and talk about earth building as a technique, or techniques that have been typically used in the past in times when there was these types of crunches. There was resource scarcity, or like costs were a problem, and people have always resorted back to using earth or local materials just because they had to. Unfortunately, earth building seems to have a little bit of, there's two things going on. So earth building is popular with quite wealthy people, and then on the other hand, it is sort of looked down upon as being, I don't know, just for the poor, a poor material, as something that is not durable, something that is not clean or tidy. And it's a real shame because it's the material that has the longest history as building materials. It has stood the test of time. It has very many different techniques that are adapted to local conditions. It's definitely not just useful for dry and arid and hot climates. It's been used in cool and damp climates, and it has a good track record if done properly. Earth is also available in most places, so it is a local material, and often it gets from the excavation. When something gets built, it actually gets excavated on site and then dumped. So often you are actually, the building material is right there, but we're not using it, and that is a real shame. So I'm wanting to really talk about earth building when it comes to cheaper building, because not because I think it's dirt cheap or anything, but because it lends itself to owner builder effort, and because the materials are often available for free or cheap, and the main effort that you're putting in is labor, which is semi-skilled. You can pick that up, and that's what we want to teach, and what we are also teaching over distance is how to use these materials that you're encountering locally in your building. So the buildings could be two different things. They could be a new build, or they could be a retrofit situation. And I start with the retrofit. So the retrofit could be, you have an existing building and you want to upgrade it. Or it could be you're relocating a building, you've bought a building cheap, an old building, and you're renovating it. And you have many options of bringing earth inside an existing building and using earth as building materials for walls, for floors, for insulation, and so forth. So for partition walls, it can be used in many different applications. And I'm not going to cover this too much. It sort of goes off topic a little bit. I have got a class on retrofitting where I talk about this for a whole hour and give ideas. It's available on our website, Retrofitting with Natural Materials. But you can do many things. So you can plaster over a variety of substrates. You can make floors with it. You can make the mixes lighter and infill them. And I'll show you examples further down with the photos on this as well. On the other hand, if we're looking at new builds, I'm sort of always circling back to the adobe brick, especially in temperate climates. It's not because I have a mud brick yard. I think after 20 years, I still have a mud brick yard because it just, like, the longer I think about it, the more it makes sense to me. And the mud brick is just a really simple building material that lends itself for owner builder effort. And I'll show you examples of people that have done this and how they did it. And, the Corp goes along the same line. There's a little bit of a different logistical considerations to be considered with Corp, but it's basically the same thing as Adobe, just put together differently. In places where you have a grain growing area and there is straw, definitely looking into straw bale as a local resource and for walls is a great thing to do in your colder climates. So I'm getting that comment a lot, oh, you're just about earth building. I'm like, no, I am about local materials. And earth goes with straw really well. So the two marry each other. And I think straw makes a lot of sense if you don't have to cart the straw around for too far. In moderate climates, the light adobe brick, the low density adobe brick is absolutely fine and performs really well in terms of insulation. So here, for example, we use wood shavings and sawdust in our bricks instead of straw. So that works too. And then depending on whether you have timber as a cheap resource or affordable resource, timber is going up heaps in price, and there's supply crunches at the moment. So, but if there is timber, you have milled your own, you know someone locally, there's these options of having the hybrid of timber and earth, where you have a lot of infill or you have veneer bricks and so forth. So there's many options. So starting on the photos and just going back for a moment historically, this is the Riverlands Corp Cottage in Blenheim. It's a Corp building. And the reason why I'm starting the photos with this building is because we were invited to restore it. So that you see the bottom, we did some restoration to the Corp. And I was amazed because this building was built, the people that came to this place, they needed instant or like fast accommodation, interim accommodation while they were building the timber homestead. They built this building without foundations, onto the ground, onto swamp. Wasn't ideal. There was a rising damp problem. They milled timber, they built the timber homestead. You know, this building is 150 years old. So in the meantime, the timber homestead has disappeared. It has lived a long life and it's not there anymore. You know, I don't know how old it got, maybe got 80 to 100 years old. But this humble building that was just built at the start to have shelter survived. And it will survive many more years, many more decades. In actual fact, we've solved the rising damp problem. And as this building dried out, it turned into something absolutely wonderful. I would live in it, even though I would like slightly bigger windows than it had if I lived in it. But it was such a beautiful building, and it just has survived 150 years just humbly being there. It's beautiful. And it was built with bare hands. You know, they maybe had animals to stomp the clay, or they did it by foot. And it's all good. And in this region, we actually have seen evidence of that scenario playing out in a couple of different places. So there's quite a lot of earth buildings in the Blenheim area in Marlborough. And there was even stories of sawmillers, or people that were selling timber, reverting to mud brick in their own buildings because it was simpler for them. And now, you know, fast forward 2006, we started building our own building. And I have got an architecture background. So when we took on the Adobe Yard in Nelson and we were looking at building our own place, I wanted to incorporate a few different elements into this building. I wanted to have a double story, like being European, that was a thing. I wanted to be able to showcase different techniques in the building. So I wanted to have the downstairs load-bearing adobe block. So these blocks on the first floor, like on the ground level here, they support the weight of the upstairs and the roof. And the upstairs is a timber frame construction insulated with sheet material inside. So it's a conventional build, what you would call, you know, the conventional New Zealand timber frame. And it has earth plasters over the board. So inside there's a mix between adobe block, earthen plasters, and a few other things. So you'll see that in a moment. So this type of construction, the double story, the timber upstairs, it was definitely not the cheapest we could have built. For us, it was important. We were a young family. We had to build affordable, but we didn't want to go for the cheapest. We wanted to tick certain environmental boxes. We had, you know, like on-site grey water system. We have solar hot water and a few other features in this building. So I'll just show you some interior shots. And with the architectural background, I also wanted to have a big open space over the living room, and little elements like that definitely would have brought the cost of the building up. Feel nice, like I'm very pleased with the building, but the cost reduction was not the most important thing. And still, we are very, very pleased with the price tag on this building. We did a lot of it ourselves. I drew the plans myself, and then it was still overseen by an engineer. We made our own bricks. We laid the bricks. We had some help with the timber frame, where we paid for a builder to come and help us with the roof as well. There's quite a lot of glazing. We did the plastering. We basically were involved in all the building work except from plumbing, drain laying, and electrical on this building. So we learned a lot, and it was awesome. At the time, if you remember, like the average price per square meter was $1,250. This building came out at $850 a square meter. So I'm not saying this to go, if you do it like this, that's what the savings you can have. I'm just saying it to give you sort of a little bit of an idea of scale of what we were able to save by putting in owner-builder effort. We were also at the same time producing bricks and working, so it was quite stressful. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And it took us for the main structure and enclosing it and getting it livable. It took us about a year, and then the finishing touches inside took us another couple of years. So we tried to balance having to work and carry on with our lives and so forth, and finishing the house in a reasonable amount of time, because that sometimes can drag out quite a lot with owner builders. So you hear these stories that it took decades to finish a house, and that's often when it's a labor of love. I can really understand that, but it also puts people off. So I really want to say it doesn't have to take decades. We were a young couple with not that much building experience. We had earth building experience, but we didn't have timber building experience, and we learned things along the way, and it didn't take that long. So we tried to keep it. And it was not modest in our book coming from Europe, but it is a modest house compared to New Zealand average. But like for me, at this point, if it would have just been the downstairs, it would have been absolutely enough. So it's a big house, and I love it, but it is, now that the kids have left, it's too big for us. And these are our neighbors. So just wanting to put this in here, because this is a sort of a 35-40 square meter cottage. It's a 1-bedroom cottage, and they bought the bricks from us and laid the bricks themselves and built the rest themselves. And they came out like their price tag was comparable to our price tag. Was built in the same year, and it is a really nice rebuilding. So I'm sort of seeing now that the 30 square meter buildings are more accessible, easier to build, and like legally. I see there's a lot of scope in the 30 square meter buildings, and I'm hoping that people will see that 30 square meters is actually a nice size, and maybe finding living models where some resources, living resources, can be shared, and then there's private space that is a little bit smaller. So just putting this in here to show you very simple oblong design, roof with overhang, very good, durable design for the mud brick, and it was super simple. The advantage and the simplicity of the material you see here is that when you build an earthen wall, the wall system, the actual brick, fulfills many different functions. So it is at the same time structure, so support, insulation, interior lining, exterior lining. So it's not like a big sandwich of different materials. It's basically that, the earthen wall, and you might have a thin finish on the inside, and depending on how exposed the building is, you will have to do something on the outside. But it is very simple. And here you see the Harrington family. So they started building when they had these little kids, and they made the bricks themselves and built the home themselves. They managed to build this really cheaply. And I'm very fond of this project because they actually, we advised them, but most of this was done over email. So I did go and visit them on occasion, but this showed me that it was possible to advise people remotely. And this is what gave me the idea for the Earthbuilding Academy, for teaching online or for consulting over email or over Zoom, because it was absolutely possible. Like even developing mixes, that we developed the brick mix, we tested the bricks, and everything was done consented. And they are now on their second home. They built the second home in the same technique, so it didn't put them off at all. They love it, and they've just been in the news actually. So I am going to also link this article below, because it's up to date, and it was a nice article. So they have nice experience with Adobe. Here you see their Adobe production of the bricks drying and how the interior looked. As they were finishing, they put in some earthen floors, and they had timber that was locally milled. And this is how the first house looks on the outside. So it's modest, like they had recycled joinery on this building. They really started collecting building materials ahead of time, and they built the house. They designed the house to what they had scored. And this is another one. So the Stavely house, I put this in here for right after the last picture, because this was a similar scenario. These people, they scored double glazing cheap, because it was a run that had wrong sizes. So they started the house off with the glazing that they had scored cheaply, and they designed the house around the sizes of glass panels that they had. And glazing can be, like the windows and doors can be quite a substantial part of the cost of the building. So they managed to save a heap of money by doing this, pulled that wrong sized glass out of the waste stream, which is great. And they also decided to use mud brick. So in this case, they bought the bricks from us because the guy had a well-paying job. So he was like, I don't want to spend a summer making bricks. I just want to lay my own bricks and build the house in one go. And that's them. So they did a wonderful job. This building is down in Canterbury. So it's doing well. You see, like it was even in a place where they do get snow. It is comfortable, and they have had a really streamlined building experience where they just laid these bricks, and it didn't take them that long. And then so this is quite a similar design to ours actually, where they have an upstairs that is made out of timber. So there's way more work in the timber work upstairs, but it looks beautiful and it complements each other really well. And then another project that I have been very interested in following over the years is this solar boat. So it's developed by a designer called Mark Fielding from Ecotect. And Mark Fielding has really, over the years, like over the last 15 years at least, he has looked into affordable housing. So even before it was as important as it is now, he was already looking at bringing costs down, like modular building, and what could be done to bring the price of building down. So he developed the solar boat as a modular building, so a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom type thing. And he had a couple of clients that built them. So I am putting his so the ecotech.co.nz, he doesn't know that I'm shouting out to him, but he's worth checking out. We were involved in some of these buildings because we supplied bricks for thermal mass walls inside. So I'm going to show you how that looks inside. There were different prototypes of the solar boat. He is all about passive solar design, so very big on passive solar, and wanted to bring in thermal mass walls. And he understands that mud brick or earthen walls are really good thermal mass walls, much lower embodied energy than concrete. So his designs often work with the mud bricks, but then depending on clients, some clients don't want mud bricks, so then they'll go to a different kind of thermal mass material. The interesting thing about these projects was that the design really made a big impact on the building cost. He had thought about it, like knotted everything out. So, for example, things like the roof structure, and really tried to optimize costs. And then he had the situation where clients had the same plans, the same everything, but they wanted to change some details around some of the things. And it was really interesting that the building that was done in owner-builder effort, maybe to a little bit of a lower standard, but that was really sticking to the solar boat plan, came out $100,000 cheaper than one that looked really similar. It had a different, I think it had an extra bathroom or something. But that just shows you that it is really hard to say how much something will cost, because it will depend on your material choices. It will depend on the level of finish. It will depend on little things like, bathrooms and so forth. So it really pays to sit down, simplify things. And Mark has got plans that are actually for sale on his website. So if you want to go and check those out, they're really discounted. So it's a little thing that I just wanted to put in there in case someone wants to save money on design, or if you even just want to get ideas on passive solar designs. It's well worth checking out. He also got into another project, which was his, he was very inspired by Meg Reynolds' building with waste materials, reclaimed materials. So he went into this whole thing about building with pellets for portable buildings. So these are unconsented, small, exempt buildings. And he developed a system where he was building panels with shipping, like with pellets, but stress testing them, so to make sure that they're safe. And he was tinkering around with that. He's written an ebook about the building with pellets. So this is the link, and I'm going to also link that below. We were involved in one of these builds because he was doing a couple of things that included earth in these buildings. So one of them was, if you see at the bottom left, the finish inside, the lining is actually recycled carpet, which he painted with a clay paint. And it looked really smart and tidy. We developed the clay paint for him and supplied it to him for his prototype. And the other thing we tested was, instead of having bat insulation or styrofoam insulation, which he was using recycled styrofoam packaging from, packaging fridges and so forth in his walls. While it is a waste product, it's not a very nice product. It's not breathable. I don't like it that much. So we were suggesting to him to test a light earth infill in his pallet walls, and also thinking along the lines that introducing an earthen mix into the pellet might help preserve the pellet, dry everything out. And you can also play with the densities of the material. So on your sunny side, you can up the density a little bit, have a little bit of a heavier fill for more thermal mass. And on the colder sides of the building, we increased the lightweight aggregate in the mix. In this case, it was wood shavings, and for higher insulation values. And that worked really well. It's a really nice little building. He has also adjusted this concept to full building plans, but I don't know if he's actually ever had one consented. But if you're interested in that, you can check that out. So there's two things. It's ecotech.co.nz, and there's a lot of information on that website also about passive solar design. And then another thing we were involved in was a community project with Ngāi Tuhoi. And while this was done for their tribal headquarters, which definitely doesn't go in under the bracket of affordable housing at all, it's an absolute piece of art and holds a lot of mana. The earth building component in that building was really interesting, and it was a really beautiful thing to be involved in. So what we did was we went up and we taught 20 people from the community, these 20, how to make bricks and how to lay the bricks. And they then proceeded to making more mud bricks and laying more mud bricks with many people from the community. So on the photo here, you see an effort that took us 2 days with hand molds. And it was laid back, and we made 1,400 bricks in 2 days. The reason why this was so streamlined was because we used a tractor to produce a lot of mix ahead of time. We hired a tractor and we made up 20 cubic meters of material, had it delivered to this place that was undercover. The time of the year was not ideal. That's why we had to go indoors. And we just cranked them out with hand molds and, banter and nice. It wasn't back-breaking. It was really a nice experience. And somehow I hoped that this experience would have led someone in the community to maybe starting up a mud brick yard in their community. Hasn't happened yet, but it is really something that I encourage people, if you're at all interested in making bricks and setting up a yard and having a community project like this, talk to us, because we're very happy to share our knowledge and to support you in doing this. And we really have found that if the mud brick is available as a resource locally, it is much easier to then go ahead and build buildings. The step, of having to make your own bricks 1 year and then building the next year, it's totally feasible. It's great. It's easy to do, but it seems to just hold people back a little bit. Like it's maybe mentally more of a stretch to think that. But if the bricks were available, if we were able to buy them, and they were just a mainstream building material, I think this type of construction would have so much scope, especially, in the top of the South Island in New Zealand, all of the North Island, apart from maybe the Central Plateau, and worldwide in temperate climates. Not if you have like meters of snow, but in temperate climates, it's great. You can adjust the mix to have better insulation value with your low density adobe. It is not a building material that is just useful for hot and dry climates at all. So here you see the big heap of mud that was delivered for mortar. It's just sand and clay, and the lady here laying the bricks, they loved the experience, and everyone just got stuck in. And here just a couple of other photos of these types of veneer bricks walls, which in this case, serves thermal mass function in timber frame buildings. So the adobe technique can be used both for load-bearing walls and for veneers. Interior veneers, we don't recommend them as exterior cladding. They're just, clay-based and not fired, but they're wonderful, wonderful material to add to any interior. And here a couple of photos of earthen plasters. So on the left, you see an earthen plaster over carpet backing, which both materials you can pick up very cheaply or free. And they basically, together, they work as a substitute for your gypsum board. But you can also plaster over gypsum board. So if you go down the more conventional route, that is an option too. And as I said, there is the class is available on our website, retrofitting with natural materials, and I touch on several different options for retrofitting, and we also go into all of this in way more depth in the first half of the online Earthbuilding Academy. The Earthbuilding Academy is in two parts. So like the first part is about retrofitting. The second part is all about Adobe, from digging soil to finishing, and everything in between, developing mixes and testing. So I hope this has given some inspiration and ideas. I'm just going to go to the comments. If you have questions, you can pop them into the comments. And if you're watching the replay, I really also invite you to drop us questions or get in touch if you want to know anything about anything I've shared. I know it's just sort of, an eagle eye view, sharing of our own personal experience. We could talk about this. I wish we could sit together and brainstorm more ideas of how to make buildings more affordable. And on that note, I would also like to extend the invitation that if you have own experience where you really found, this has really helped me to save on costs in my building, please share them in the comments, because it will maybe help someone else. And the hive mind is beautiful. So I love this about the online space. I would like to maybe request, like that there is awareness that it will not be the same for everyone in every place, because living conditions, life conditions, privilege, and so forth varies, and I really want to acknowledge that. But if we can draw from our shared resources, of our shared experiences, I think it would be beneficial, and I really thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at the questions. Do you think it would work in the Central Plateau? Mud brick. The Central Plateau can get quite cold. It depends a little bit on how much solar gain you get. And you always, for the earth building, for the mud brick, even the low density bricks, which have much better insulation values, if you thought you needed a little bit more insulation, you can always additionally insulate them from the outside. And that is quite easily done. Do the council approve these bricks as normal building material? Paula, thank you so much for this question. So yes, they do. And this is, I should have said this, I should have clarified it. I sort of should actually say it in every live stream. So in New Zealand, we are very fortunate to have 3 building standards that look at earth building. The New Zealand Earth Building Standards were first written in 1998. They're very well received. They're internationally relevant. They're amazing. And they have just been revised in 2020. They're part of the building code. So if you design to those standards, it is like any other building material, it will just get approved. And if your local council doesn't have any experience with these kind of materials, you can point them towards the standards, or you can get in touch with us, and we love to support you. There's also the Earthbuilding Association of New Zealand, which is doing amazing work lobbying for owner builders and educating. So there's a really good support network in Aotearoa New Zealand. And the standards are also relevant for other countries. So the 1998 standard has been superseded because there is a revision. It is still a really good standard. There's like the new revised version has mainly been extended and slightly tweaked after the Christchurch earthquakes. The 1998 standards are still good, not to get council approval in New Zealand, but if you wanted to have a starting point and costs are an issue, the 1998 version of the standard is available for download for free. We'll put links below. Really good. If you're wanting council approval, I would suggest you buy the 2020 version, or you get your designer to buy it. Sometimes the libraries have got it. So I hope that helps. And Kylie, will I make this shareable? Yeah, I think you can just share the replay of this, and I would love you to do that. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I am really happy to be here with you all, and I hope you find value in the live streams. I'm really enjoying doing them and putting some effort into them, and also realizing that every time I open the lid to one of the topics, we could be talking about this for so much longer. So inviting you to check out the other ones if you're interested, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.